Welcome to the Strokecast. A Generation X stroke survivor explores rehab, recovery, the frontiers of neuroscience, and how to peel a banana with one hand.
Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 131 of the Strokecast. This episode is brought to you by the fine folks at Motus Nova. To see if the Motus hand or Motus foot can help you with your limb recovery after stroke, be sure to visit strokecast.com/Motus Nova. Today is going to maybe a shorter episode. It's actually going to be a solo episode because there's a few things I want to talk about this week. In part, I want to follow up on some of the discussions from last week that I had with Rachel from BraEasy. And if you want to learn more about the one-handed bra from BraEasy, go to strokecast.com/BraEasy, and you can listen to my conversation with Rachel, where we talk about her daughter's stroke journey, as well as Rachel's journey for creating a new clothing company to help with accessible clothing. But the thing that I wanted to talk about is something I probably would have talked about in my epilogue last week, but I just wasn't quite sure what the thoughts were that I was trying to articulate. And that comes around the questions of diagnostics. See, as I've been, of course, in stroke world longer and longer, and reading more and more people's stories, I've also been reading stories of plenty of other people with disabilities and other disabled people who may have common conditions or may have conditions that may be more arcane. And of course, following some of the other discussions of the various medical professionals that I've talked with, both sort of quasi-professionally, professionally, and socially, there's a whole lot of stuff going on there. So I'm sort of babbling a little bit there. So let me get to the point here. One of the things that medical professionals are taught is that when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. And the meaning behind that is that when you see symptoms of a condition, start by assuming it's the common condition. It's the most likely version, because you're going to much more likely, especially in the United States, to encounter horses than you are zebras. Don't start thinking about the exotic or the less than 1% type of stuff when there are other much more common possibilities. And, that makes a lot of sense because you want to treat the most obvious conditions, the ones that are most likely there. Where it gets into a problem, though, is when it is, in fact, a zebra. It is, in fact, a rare condition. And that's what Rachel and Jamie were facing with Jamie's condition. As Rachel told the story last week, when Jamie was 8 years old, she began just sort of phasing out, not paying attention in class for minutes at a time. The doctors kept diagnosing it as, it's probably something with an anxiety attack or some other condition like that related to mental health. And what was actually happening was that Jamie was having seizures, and her brain was just sort of seizing. And Rachel continued to aggressively Google the symptoms and conditions, and finally came to her own conclusion that this was something else that needed to be resolved physically, and finally having to insist on the physical exams and scans from the doctors. And when they finally did that, after upwards of a year of going through this experience, they discovered that Jamie had a brain tumor that would have been fatal within a year had it not been taken out. And that's a big deal. I mean, a lot of the times we think the whole idea of, you shouldn't go to WebMD or you shouldn't go to Dr. Google for your symptoms because it's just going to tell you have cancer and you're going to die. Sometimes that is what the condition is. And sometimes that is a condition that needs to be recognized and treated. And it was Rachel's insistence on not just accepting the diagnoses from the medical professionals that she was talking with that drove her to do her own internet research, that internet research that many times gets disregarded and to insist on that exam, and she was right. And this is a tricky thing to work through, especially from my perspective, because I look at this stuff and I definitely place a heck of a lot of faith in the medical establishment. The doctors and therapists that I have worked with and encountered are genuinely interested in patient care and caring about their patients and wanting their patients to get better. Even some of those that might not have the best bedside manner or might not necessarily be the kind of people you want talking to other human beings. They care and they want people to get better. They're not just interested in just sort of pushing people off. And the fact is, when you look at the science of what's going on around us, that is what we have to rely on. Science saves lives. Vaccines save lives. All of this stuff is helpful. All of this stuff is making a difference. And it's very easy to go ahead and just disregard the random internet searches. One of the, not that I've heard this directly from anybody I've talked to, but one of the memes that has popped up on the internet from people purporting to be doctors is that your Google search does not outweigh my medical degree. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I can absolutely buy into that. But then there are times where, again, we have a situation like Jamie was in, where her mother, Rachel, had to go ahead and do this research and did that research and did come up with the accurate diagnosis and did it in such a way that she managed to save her daughter's life. And that's a big deal. So my point here is that we absolutely need to be trusting in the science. We absolutely need to be paying attention to the science and following the best recommendations from science. What do the studies say? Are those studies large enough? Are those studies double-blinded if possible? What do we know about the population in that study? All of this stuff matters. And all of this stuff provides us with the best practices. But ultimately, when we don't get answers that are helping, and when things are not getting better, at the end of the day, we need to be our own advocates, and we need to be strong advocates for that. And more specifically, I guess when we start looking at what does it mean for stroke, what that means is that if we're not getting the results we need to be pushing for results. We need to do the work. We need to do the therapy. We need to get those thousands of repetitions in. And if we don't know what's causing a stroke, we need to ask more questions. We need to keep looking into that. We need to try to better understand what's happening. And I mean, that's sort of at the extreme level is one way to look at it. But the other thing that I've encountered too is as I talk with some survivors, not all survivors know whether they had an ischemic stroke or a hemorrhagic stroke. Sort of one of the most basic differences between the types of stroke. Or they don't know the details of it. And granted, in some cases, that could be because the stroke affected their executive functioning or their memory or all of these different types of things. I mean, it's very easy to have issues with memory, to have issues with decision-making, to have all of those different types of issues as resulting from the injury to the brain. But at the same time, a lot of times, different medical professionals may not be as proactive about communicating with survivors and caregivers just what is going on. Just what has happened. What are the results? And we end up with half stories or half theories. We end up with the misperception that you're only going to recover in 6 months or a year, when we know now that that is just not true. We need to ask questions. And many times those answers are readily available. If you are working with a therapist, ask them questions. Ask your PT or your OT or your speech therapist what they're doing with you. Why are they doing that? What result are they hoping to achieve? What is it going to take to achieve that result? If you really want, go deeper. What muscles are you working with? How do you know it's an issue with that muscle not connecting? Go ahead and get your advanced knowledge on anatomy and physiology from these professionals as you're working with them. Many of them are in these jobs because they love this material. They love working with people like this, and they love understanding what's happening in a person's body and with a person's nerves and how a person's able to connect with them. And you know what? They spend a lot of time in school learning all these details about anatomy and physiology and kinesiology and how stuff moves and how stuff connects and how stuff functions. And they like talking about it. Ask questions. You're always going to have to ask questions, because the more questions you ask, the better an advocate that you can be for yourself, or the better of an advocate that you can be for your loved ones. Ultimately, your recovery, my recovery, our recoveries, they're up to us. We're the only ones who can make it happen. We can have fantastic tools, and there are a lot of fantastic tools out there that can absolutely help us get in our repetitions, do our exercises, stretch, practice, engage with folks, whatever it is. Some of them are basic, some of them are high tech, whatever it is. Ultimately, we still have to do the work. We still have to use those tools. We still have to apply them. We still have to be the advocate for our own recovery. And that starts with knowing the basics. When you get a point where you don't get any more answers, sometimes you have to go ahead and keep asking those questions. Ask more. Push for this. A lot of money is being spent on our recoveries. Let's make sure we're getting as much out of that as we can. And ultimately, if the answers you're getting aren't getting the results you need, dig deeper, find out more, ask more questions, and come back to your medical team with some of those questions. That's what Rachel did, and that's why Jamie is alive today, because she kept asking those questions. At a big picture level, I absolutely agree. When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. But know that sometimes, maybe pretty rare, but occasionally, there is going to be a zebra out there. And you can't stop looking, and you can't stop asking. So there's lots of things happening, and apparently I could just keep going on about that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about today is, let's talk a little bit about some identity stuff and some stuff around recovery. And what's prompting me to think about this stuff today is I've been following on Instagram the story of Wheelchair Rapunzel. And you can find her on Instagram at instagram.com/wheelchair_Rapunzel. Her name is Alex Dacey, and she lives with spinal muscular atrophy. Basically, it's a condition that severely impacts her motor neurons, and limits her ability to use her limbs, limits her ability to swallow and speak, gave her some challenges with breathing, and lots of stuff. She uses a power chair to get around, and has really built up quite an impressive following on Instagram. She's got well over 130,000 followers now. And I don't want to get too much into her story because she obviously tells her story much more effectively than I can. And I'd encourage you to go ahead and check that out. But the reason I wanted to talk about this today is that she has recently started a new treatment, a medication called Ristaplan. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She refers to it as her twerk juice. She's got a really amazing attitude and approach to this about what it's meant for her life and whatnot. And she's been getting really great results from this treatment, from this medication, with helping with her access to her limbs, helping her swallowing, helping her speech, helping all of this stuff. She's gotten some really impressive results. And again, she's telling that story, so definitely check that out over at instagram.com/wheelchair_Rapunzel. But more than just talking about that story, what's been happening is she's also been getting a lot of backlash on social media. And, well, part of the reason she's getting backlash on social media is because she's a woman on the internet. And yeah, that alone comes with a whole bunch of just crap no one should have to deal with. But she's getting people are coming back at her for the way she's talking about this treatment. And some people are upset that she's talking about the results she's getting because others are allegedly getting false hope, or they feel like she's empowered by talking about this. She's empowering ableds to go ahead and question other people with disabilities about why they're not doing better and why they're not doing more. And she's been really getting a lot of angry results from this, from just talking about her positive experience. And it's really quite striking to see that happen. And I shouldn't be surprised. I've been on the internet long enough that I should not be surprised at the depravity that some people will sink to. But I guess that's just the eternal optimist in me. But, I mean, this gets me thinking about what it means in terms of stroke and stroke recovery. One of the things that's most important as a survivor of stroke is not to compare your stroke to somebody else's, because every stroke is different. We say that again and again. Everybody's deficits or disabilities are going to be different. Everybody's recovery is going to be different. So to start off, comparing your recovery to somebody else's recovery is not going to really be helpful. There's just not a ton of value in doing that. All you can do is do the work as best you can. The other thing that is an element of this and that comes into it is stroke is one of those things that can in some ways be on the fringe of the disability community. Because unlike a lot of other degenerative nerve conditions or other disabling conditions that just continue to get worse, with stroke, we can continue to get better. In 5 years, I expect I will have a lot more use of my hand and smoother use of my leg than I have today. It's going to be better. It's going to be slow, and it may not be a huge difference from where we are today, but assuming nothing else happens, it's going to be better. And I think a lot of times when we look at some of the other conditions in the disability community, a lot of the folks we encounter are either going to stay the same or they are going to be in worse condition. They're going to have more severe disabilities or deficits. And so that becomes interesting. How do we talk about a recovery? Is it a question of, is it something that's fair to talk about? And even within stroke, some stroke survivors are not going to get a whole lot better. Some of us are. And do we stop talking about our gains out of respect for those who are not going to get better? No, that's not the way to do it. When somebody does get better and does show improvements, we ought to be applauding that. We ought to be celebrating that. Whether or not we're able to achieve those, whether or not we're able to get that sort of recovery, we got to be celebrating what people in our community are doing. At the same time, there's a limit to how we talk about our good news and how we talk about our recovery. I can talk about how, yes, I am getting more use of my fingers back. I am getting better. I am recovering some of this. Maybe I'm walking a little bit further, whatever it is. And that's great. Where it becomes problematic is when I suddenly say, and if you do the same thing that I do, you will too. And if you're not recovering, it's because you're not working hard enough or you're not doing the stuff. And that's problematic. When you start making those comparisons, that becomes a problem. Now, I'm threading a little bit of a needle here, because you've also heard me say, even in this episode, We got to do the work because that's how we're going to recover. I do want to point out that doing the work and doing what we need to do to recover, along with having that action-oriented attitude toward recovery, does not guarantee recovery. It's a necessary condition to recover. It is not sufficient. And what I mean when I say necessary but not sufficient is that doing the work does not guarantee recovery. Failing to do the work guarantees you won't recover. If I don't do the work, I'm not going to get better. If I do the work, then I have a chance to get better. And I feel comfortable in saying for most other people, if you do the work, then you have a chance to get better. You might not actually get better, but you're putting yourself in a position where you can. The other element of this, too, that gets tied in is we talk about getting better. We can talk about recovery. But what does it mean? And does it matter? See, there's the simple perception that if you can get any better at all, there's a moral imperative that you get better. That you do all of the work to go ahead and get better. But maybe that's not the moral imperative we should be pursuing. Maybe that's not the way to look at it. Look, I mean, recovering and living with disabilities, and let me just say that living with disabilities and living with deficits is not necessarily a terrible thing. It doesn't make us any less of people. It doesn't make our goals and our dreams any less valid. It doesn't make our contributions to society less valid. It doesn't make our value as human beings less valuable. There can come a point where you can say, you know what? I really am satisfied with where I am. Maybe I don't need full dexterity in my hand. And you know what? That's okay. What can I do without that? Can I still pursue the life that I want to pursue? If you can pursue your goals, if you can pursue your dreams, if you can achieve those without going through a full recovery to where you were before your stroke, you know what? More power to you. That's fine. Our limbs, our bodies, our brains, our speech, these are at some levels all tools, just tools for our broader self-identity. These are just things. Our bodies help us to get to what we want to do, help us to achieve our goals. But if we can achieve our goals without having the perfect, quote-unquote, perfect body, without having the 100% full ability that we may have had before a stroke, or maybe we never even had it, but if we can achieve what we want, what our goals are without doing that, that's fine. Not everybody needs to be able to run a marathon. Not everybody needs to be able to dance. Not everybody needs to be able to use both hands in fine dexterity and whatnot. Not everybody needs that. If you want that, absolutely fantastic. Let's help you get there. Let's help you do whatever we can. Let's help you do whatever we can to get you to that point that you want to get to. But if it's not a part of the way you want to live your life, that's okay. There is nothing wrong with that. So that's just some of those thoughts that I've been having around questions of disability and improvement and recovery and a whole mishmash of stuff. Might not be the most clearest through line, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Go ahead and share them in the comments on this post, or reach out to me on Twitter or on Instagram with that. The other thing that I have just been thinking a little bit more about lately is sort of not even directly related to stroke, but I did just have my birthday in mid-April, my original birthday, celebrating my escape from the womb day back in the early 70s. And I did just turn 50, which is kind of still mind-boggling. I still have trouble believing that, especially when I think that now I am as far away from age 20 as I am from age 80. And one of the other things I've come to realize, with, of course, the exception of 2020 and 2021, because time is just a complete mess. What is it now? March 515th or something? I don't even know anymore. But every year, the years go faster. The weeks go faster, the months go faster. Everything is happening faster than it did the year before. And like I said, closer to, technically, by a few days now, I'm closer to 80 than I am to 20. Well, we can quibble with the math on that, but simplified, 30 years from either one. And it feels like I was 20 just 5 years ago. And it's kind of thinking about, wow, 80 is going to come up pretty darn quick. I'm going to blink and it's going to be here. And yeah, I'm just sort of working with that and tossing that over as I continue to, what do I do? So what do I do with that? Well, continue to pursue the goals that I have. Continue to do what I can to achieve the things that I want to achieve in life for myself, for my family, for my community. And that's what we do. Got to pursue those passion projects and start thinking, at some point, life actually begins, because it's felt like the last 50 years or so has all been sort of prep work, sort of waiting for real life to begin. But apparently real life actually began some time ago, and I've been living it for a while. And it's about thinking about, what does all this mean going forward? And no, I'm not sad about it. I'm not morose about it or anything. I'm not feeling the crushing weight of aging on top of me. But it's one of those things that is sort of floating around in my mind. And maybe it's sort of floating around on that intellectual level, because, again, my brain damage was on my right side. So that's sort of my go-to now on those things. Anyway, those are some of those things. I want you to ultimately, sort of be empowered to pursue the goals that are going to matter to you. If you want to get those limbs back, do that work. If you want to get that speech back, do that work. Do those projects, because that puts you in a position where recovery may be possible. If you don't do the work, if you don't have the right action-oriented attitude, it's not gonna happen. If you decide you don't want it to happen, that's a whole other thing, and that can be okay too. Respect other people on the internet. I want you to definitely keep that in mind. And remember to ask the questions, understand what you need to understand in order to take care of your health and the health of your loved ones. So that brings us to our hack of the week. But before I get to our hack of the week, I do also want to just talk a little bit about Modus Nova, our sponsor. Because Modus Nova actually makes devices to help stroke survivors with our at-home rehab. We talk a lot about the work you got to do, and that includes getting thousands of reps in. If you want to get those limbs back, if you want to get that hand back, or get that foot back, the Modus Nova, Modus Hand or Modus Foot, what they do is they help you get those reps in by letting you play video games, because playing games makes it much more likely that we'll go ahead and do our rehab. And even though it's late at night, as soon as I get this episode up, I'm going to go ahead and put on my Modus Hand and start doing my my exercises, start playing those games, and start playing that Symphony Hero and that thermometer game, and even solitaire, to try and again, continue to work on that. These devices are robotic exoskeletons powered by air to help you move or resist the movement in your hand, to help make sure you're getting the right workout as part of your recovery. If you'd like to learn more about the Motus hand or Motus foot and find out if the Motus Nova devices can help with your recovery, go ahead and visit strokecast.com/Motus Nova to complete a free online assessment, and be sure to use the promo code STROKECAST to save 10% off your first month. And that brings me back to our hack of the week now. So my hack of the week this week is actually something similar that I've talked about in the past. In the past, I've talked about getting a wagon, because a wagon can be a great tool for going out and about, doing your shopping, hauling your Costco load of groceries in from the car, whatever. It's really nice for that. When my grandmother was older, walking around Brooklyn in the 80s, she would always have a shopping cart with her rather than using a walker, because she felt more confident with the shopping cart versus a walker. So what I want to talk about today is something a little bit similar, and that is a rolling laundry cart. We've seen these in laundromats, these metal carts with this big metal loop over the top you can hang stuff from, big metal basket you can put all your clothes in, and you can actually get those for home. So my girlfriend and I actually have one in our apartment, and I find it is super useful for getting laundry from the hamper in the bedroom to the washer and dryer at the other end of the apartment. I thought it was silly at first, but it's turned out to be really quite useful and very easy to push. I mean, when I first had my stroke, I was dealing with a tub of laundry, a hamper for laundry, just dragging that around when I still had to use my cane inside and only had the one hand. And it was just a pain to sort of kick it around. But now with the rolling laundry cart, it's got a nice tall pole that I can just drag by, gives me some more stability, and it's on wheels, so it moves super easy and makes it a heck of a lot easier for me to haul the laundry to and from the washing machine. A big rolling laundry cart is a great tool to have around, and especially if your laundry is on the same level as your hamper, that is simply a great tool to have. If your laundry is on a different level of your home, then something like a shopping cart that you can take up and down stairs might also be an excellent consideration. But rolling laundry basket is going to be a great way to go, and I'll have a link over to some of those in the show notes that you may find on that you can find on Amazon. So that's it for this episode. I figured it was going to go about 13 minutes, and we're now right up around 30 minutes. So that's the thing that happens. So what I'd like you to do going forward is, first of all, make sure you are subscribed to the new Strokecast newsletter. It's a free email newsletter that is going to start in this summer, which will include updates from recent episodes as well as updates from previous guests. So you can see what your favorite Strokecast guests are doing now, along with just other things I feel like sharing in there. You could sign up for that free monthly email newsletter at strokecast.com/newsletter. Go ahead and follow wheelchair Rapunzel, wheelchair_Rapunzel on Instagram. Learn more about her story, and make sure that you do what you can. Make sure you just respect other people on the internet. Just be good to people, listen to them, let them share their stories, and share your story as well. But go ahead and follow wheelchair_Rapunzel on Instagram to learn more about her story. Be sure to check out last week's episode, strokecast.com/BraEasy, to learn more about Rachel and Jamie's story, as well as to learn more about the development of the bra that you can put on and take off with just one hand. And Rachel and the folks at BraEasy are also looking for models. So we have some information about that in that episode as well. strokecast.com/BraEasy. And with that, as always, don't get best, get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you soon.
The Strokecast, Bill Monroe, and Bill's guests provide general information and entertainment, not medical advice. Please do not make any changes to your treatment plan or the execution of your treatment plan without first consulting your personal doctor or medical team. The Strokecast is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.